Good evening from Muncie. We're going to take a look at a few of the geospatial mapping options available to us to take a look at different sites for consideration for your studio projects. This is Google Maps. This is the typical browser window in Google Maps. We can zoom into different areas of the state and region, and the default location is going to be this particular road map with a combination of streets, roads, county roads, incorporated areas, and natural areas in the simple Google color scheme. We can see here a potential of pulling up the satellite view. There is a three-dimensional view which tilts it like so. That's an option there that doesn't do much at this regional size, but as we start to zoom into different localities and different portions of the region and different watersheds, we can start to see more detail. So if we were just to go to our home base of Muncie and start to float into this region here, there's a couple of things that start to pop up. You'll notice that Google cites its sources down here as to terms of where the imagery came from and what year it was from. Google updates this imagery on a regular basis, and it's pretty current for the most part. So if we were to look at an open space site here in Muncie, these are different sites that we've considered for this portion of the past. Our past offerings of this course, we've looked at the Minnetrista sites, we've looked at different portions of the Cardinal Greenway intersecting with the White River Greenway. We've looked at different portions of the riverbanks and levee system here in Muncie. We've also looked at how the different parts of the river interface with different parts of the city. This is the John Craddock Wetland Nature Preserve, which is described in the problem statement. And as you can see, just right here in the regular interface, if you float over open spaces or known parks, Google will link you to websites or even collections of photos where you can start to form a little bit of a virtual visit. So if we were just to click on those things, you can see that photos uploaded from Google users will start to populate there. Another option is to grab our little street view folks here. You can see there are different dots in Google Maps as well as entire streets which the Google car, if you will, the Google Maps car has photographed. So if we drop ourselves down in the middle of the river, we can see that someone has uploaded a photo from the Bureau of Water Quality, which is part of the Indiana DNR, and you can look at that part of the whole of the river right there. So different parts of the Google interface have been put together with all these different place marks, connections to websites, parks that are either managed by cities or, in this case, nature preserves that are managed by nonprofits. Click on the 3D view. You can start to orbit around different open spaces using the cardinal directions here. You can see here I'm flipping around just a potential open space site around the cardinal directions. If you, on my Macintosh computer here, you can see Control plus mouse for full 3D, and then you can orbit directly like so. You can see three-dimensional masses for all of the trees and for buildings. This is Google's current three-dimensional view, which incorporates a lot of photography into what appears to be a massing model. So this is the typical view for Google Maps, just in a regular browser window in the two-dimensional and three-dimensional view, and with a combination of other street view opportunities you can see of the river and of streets and other byways and the like. We'll drop you down to an image. You can see, look for the image capture down here in the lower portion here. It'll tell you exactly when it was taken. Google was last in Muncie in July 19, and this imagery is current up to that particular date. Always be aware of, when you're using Google Images, when the date was actually taken or when Google was actually in your community. So those are the basic features of Google Maps for a browser window. I'm using Safari on a Macintosh computer. You can see all of the different Google Places that are uploaded in the Google Places directory, businesses and restaurants and things like that, which are all closed this week following the coronavirus outbreak. But you can see that parks and open spaces, whether they are managed by nonprofit organizations or by government organizations, also have websites and photos at which you can start to look at different open spaces and sites directly. So this is one way to start to do a virtual visit of some of the open spaces, nature areas, nature preserves, parks, and greenways in a community, possibly your community. So this will end this particular video. We'll move on to another interface here shortly. This is Google Earth Pro. This is available free for laptop computers. It also works. There is a mobile version available. What I'm going to show you here is some of the differences between Google Earth Pro and the features it has versus Google Earth. Just keep in mind that Google Earth as a program for your laptop or tablet is different than Google Earth Pro. Google Earth Pro has some advanced features I want to show you here, as well as distinguish Google Earth Pro from Google Maps, even though they operate off the same imagery and off the same database. Google Earth Pro just gives you a little more control over the content that you're going to be seeing on a map. So let's start with the Western Hemisphere here. I'll type in a place that we are familiar with, and Google Earth Pro will fly to it. Google Earth Pro has several databases sort of organized in very simple layers. Here in the lower left-hand corner, you can see announcements, borders and labels, places, roads, 3D buildings, ocean, weather, gallery, global awareness, more, and terrain. I currently have 3D buildings and terrain turned on. As we zoom in closer to the city of Muncie, you'll start to see three-dimensional massing appearing there as the app refreshes, and you can see three-dimensional buildings, very similar to the view that we saw in Google Maps earlier. So we can fly around the city like so, and see three-dimensional buildings in that fashion. I'll turn it back north like so. We also see our street view friend here, and as you grab him or her or them, you'll notice all of the streets will highlight to grab the street level view, very similar to the fashion in which you see Google Maps. If I fly over the river and over the White River Greenway, a little bit of topographic action here in our community. We often use the White River Levee for our capstone studio project for CAP101 because it does have topographical character to it. So that system of the river and the greenway running through the city and sort of uniting the city or looking at both sides of the river is what brings our interest to the table here. So just as it would for Google Maps, you can see that the street level view imagery is available, very similar to Google Maps. We have some advanced features though that are kind of interesting though. One is a timeline viewer in which we can actually slide and look at a particular time going back to 1992 when some of the first satellite imagery was starting to be uploaded from the USGS into different databases. So we can look at this portion of Muncie here and see some change. This is the former Aeroforge factory site. This was a foundry that operated here on that site, and over time you can see it being reduced, and then newer office buildings is now an office park. So you can see incremental change in your community or in Muncie or other communities using this slide bar, which is really interesting to see how planning and development and architecture and landscape architecture have changed in your community over time. Each layer of that image will appear like so. You'll see the imagery date down here as you move through the timeline. So we'll go all the way back to 2016. I'll toggle the terrain here. I will turn off the imagery. It'll take us back to our current view. And you can see that if you toggle terrain on and off, there is a slight difference. The three-dimensional view from Google Earth of Muncie in particular, I believe, is from 2018. The most up-to-date information or imagery here is 2019. So you can see that there's a difference here. If I toggle terrain on and off, there is a slight difference in the quality of the imagery. But let's turn the terrain back on again, just to show you another feature that I'm interested in showing you. Let that refresh. The measuring tool. So the show ruler, there is a measuring tool here that allows us to look at a line, a path, a polygon, a circle, a 3D path, or a 3D polygon. So these are all interesting things to measure. If, for instance, a circle is interesting if you were measuring a distance or radius, either a 5-minute walking radius, for instance, or a 10-minute walking radius, or a 5-minute driving radius, if you were interested, or mapping proximities of things, fire stations to different neighborhoods, or proximities of parks to certain neighborhoods. We often use a circle, radius circle, to start to generate some mapping and imagery in analyzing distances, relative distances to parks and amenities and things like that. If I click on line and I choose feet, then you can see I can drag a line here going across from the Arrow Forge, or what's now called the Ontario Office Park, and drop that on there. We can see that measurement now. I can measure almost anything in Google Earth here and start to measure buildings, measure parking lots. This just becomes part of my walking knowledge as an environmental designer. So it's always good to measure different segments, the widths of parking lots and things like that as you start to look at sites and measuring buildings. This is a handy sort of tool to start to get some relative measurements. I do want to show you now the path has a slightly different advantage to us, because this has the additional feature of being able to look at the elevation profile of a site. So if I were to drop a path now on one side of the river and take it across the other side of the river, and then I click on Show Elevation Profile, based on the USGS survey, it will actually, for all intents and purposes, draw a site section of that particular line. Google Earth likes to zoom out really far. You have to zoom back in, so it's a little bit tenuous there. But I like to come back in here, and depending on where the mouse navigation is, let me turn terrain back on. Here's my line. It's like leaving a tape measure, stretching a tape measure across the river like that. You can see how it's lying there onto the relative topography. And then as I mouse over this elevation profile, we call it a site section in architecture, landscape architecture and planning, but Google calls it an elevation profile. That red arrow there will trace exactly what elements are. So you can see there's a little bit of a hump right there. That's top of levee condition. White River Boulevard runs east to west along the river. You can see a little bit of a drop there. That's a little bit of a bowl on that back of the levee side. And top of levee condition here, it's right in the middle of the road there. That's top of levee condition. Then you can see that it starts to drop, and it drops all the way down to water level. Now you'll notice these numbers. 914 feet represents 914 feet above sea level. So we in Muncie are over 900 feet above sea level. We're a little bit higher up than other coastal communities. You'll notice that difference. But what's really nice about this tool is that pointer will show you exactly where the elevation changes start to occur. So we can see this is a gentle slope of this levee condition. The levee was constructed by the Army Corps of Engineers after a tragic flood, a couple of tragic floods in the early 20th century. And so you can see how that topographical change has impacted the path of the river as well as Muncie as a community. So this elevation profile works for anywhere on Earth and based on data that's been uploaded to the Google's database. So explore your community with Google Earth Pro and take a look at topographical changes, and then make sure to take a look at the elevation profile of different parts of your community just to give you a sense of elevation level change and things like that. Also, that line is particularly helpful when you're starting to sketch out a cross-section through your potential site. Okay, we will stop there. This is Beacon. Beacon is a GIS, Geographic Information Systems viewer for citizens to look at different mapping that their county and or municipal governments have created. So beacon.schneidercorp.com is the general web address for the Beacon viewer. You start with this introductory screen, which you pick your state. So let's pick Indiana. And then you will see the different counties and municipalities that are available under the Beacon system using geographic information system data that's shared with Beacon. So Whiteley County, Wells County, Wayne County, Wabash County, City of Terre Haute and Vigo County, Town of Plainfield, Town of McCourtsville. You can see both towns, cities, and counties, full counties use the Schneider Corp database. So if I go to Delaware County, Indiana, and then I go straight to view map, I'm not interested in a specific property search. This is how real estate agents and homeowners gauge their property and assessment values and things of that nature, or if you're looking for property in the real estate business. So if I could just go to view map, we'll get the entire county, a view of the entire county. I'm not interested in the entire county. I'm interested in more specific sites, perhaps within the city of Muncie. And then you'll start to see all of these different options over here on the left. Most of these are land records, lot numbers, parcel dimensions, different allotments, the size of lots, the area of lots, the value of lots, and their owners. We aren't interested in any of that right now. If we were in the real estate business, we would be, but if I can turn all of that off. There's more Muncie data here. There's a Muncie Parks layer. There's a neighborhoods layer that helps identify names of neighborhoods. There's a full tree inventory in terms of urban forestry, as well as any sanitary district data. We'll just leave the parks highlighted for now because we may be interested in parks and open space. There's other historic district layers, FEMA flood zones. If we're dealing, you can see the different flood zones that are impacted in different parts of Muncie. In the event of a flood, you can see how flooding would impact different neighborhoods, including the Central High School and even parts of the downtown in very high flood waters, either 50-year flood or 100-year flood waters. You can see the changes that would impact different neighborhoods on the there on the northwest side, as well as the northeast side and the east side, as well as the west side going towards Yorktown. So those are the FEMA flood zones. Very, very important for understanding climate change and its impact on Indiana. We will be seeing more flooding over the next few years. I've certainly seen more flooding in my 26 years here. I'm going to turn off corporate boundaries, political townships, but I'm going to leave 2019 aerial photography on. And I'm going to turn on contours and spot elevations. Those are things I'm interested in right now, because as we start to zoom in now to specific parts of Muncie, not all the contours are going to populate until you zoom in. So as we start to zoom in different parts of the city or parks and open space in the city, the contours will start to populate. And there they are. So we can see elevation points, or what we call spot elevations. These are precise dimensions in feet above sea level. So you can see 948 and about a half, 949 or so above sea level. So those are spot elevations above sea level when you see those numbers. And those are specific spots that have been surveyed and that could be referenced. I'll turn those off because the numbers are still relevant, but they will appear on the contours. So if we look at the river and that impacts this portion of McCullough Park or this portion of the levee, we can see spot contours appearing now on the beacon viewer. These are intervals that start to suggest now between 940 and 936 different changes in elevation. So these are topographical lines that are telling us that the elevation is changing. So you can start to see how we use these lines to define different changes in elevation, changes in topography. And as we look at the river and navigate around the river, we can see that the closer the lines are together, the steeper they are, and the further apart, the more gentle that slope is. I'm still seeing here a lot of these land records. So if we're not interested in seeing parcels, you can turn those off, and those will not appear in the potential view. So. And each time you turn one of these off, depending on your internet connection, you'll see the map start to repopulate. So I just turn all these off. These are all lot lines, claim lines, and cadastral lines. Turn off all the parcels, and you can see now, we just see the elevation markers and the contour lines. So that gives us, as we're looking at potential sites in a community that uses beacon, this is how we would start to navigate that and start to look at potential sites. So here's a potential site. This is a new stormwater feature that's part of the city of Muncie. A portion of this neighborhood was cleared recently. So this is a stormwater relief valve, if you will. When a lot of rain falls in this neighborhood, it catches in this catchment here and then eventually drains into the river. This is a flood mitigation, flood prevention tool, if you will, for communities to use as what we call a small-scale rain gardens. But this is much more on the scale of a storm water mitigation or flood mitigation tool. We can see the portion of the White River Greenway and the Cardinal Greenway crossing through McCullough Park. This is where the two greenways cross here in McCullough Park. So let's zoom in a little bit further into this portion of McCullough Park, or what we call the McCullough Trailhead. So we can see individual trees casting shadows onto the ground. We can see some open space, parking lot, and then we could see the Cardinal Greenway coming down. So if this became a potential site that we might be interested in or interested in printing out, we would zoom in fairly close. We would probably get as close as we could in terms of understanding different individual site elements. If I want to look at this site a little bit further, I might start to look at it, maybe frame it out in this particular view here. And then we can print it to scale. So we go to up here to print setup, and Beacon will give us a couple of different options. We can select our potential paper size. Now if you're on the home computer, probably an F/11 landscape would work pretty well for you. The print quality, you can select between 96, 150, 300 dpi, again, depending on your internet connection. And then you can assign a particular map scale. Now the current view is just going to give you what you see is what you get. However, you can force it into a map scale that will maximize your view on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So so at the moment right now, you can see that my screen, this is just under an inch. It's about 3/4 of an inch is representing 50 feet at the moment. Chances are that view right there would fit onto an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. But I want to be more specific with that and potentially use an engineering scale to draw or understand or measure things. I might select a scale that's going to fit on an 11 sheet of paper. So let me try 1 inch equals 100 feet. You can play with this and start to see how these different things start to appear when you print them out. I'm going to turn off everything except for the scale bar and the north arrow. We don't need any of that stuff. You don't need any of that information. You only really need the north arrow and the scale bar. And then you generate this button here, print as PDF. Beacon will then generate a PDF for you, and then you download it to your downloads file, and it looks something like this. So this now is 1 inch equals 100 feet, scaled to an 8.5 by 11 landscape-oriented letter-sized sheet of paper. So this is now a PDF that's on your computer that you can then print on a home printer. From this point forward, then, this becomes a relative scale that you can measure and use and measure distances, relative distances of a general site, and know that that scale is going to be fixed on this particular sheet of paper. So if you have an engineering scale, use the tens on the tens scale on the engineering scale. 1 inch equals 100 feet means that 1 inch on this particular map will represent 100 feet in reality. Alternatively, most of these viewers, if I back up now, have measuring tools as well. So you can see there's even an interface with Google Street View. Here's a measuring tool right here. I can measure precisely, fairly precisely, the relative dimension of this parking lot, for instance, and then it will give me a very, very close dimension right there. And I can even start to pick out a different area of this park, or even close it up. And so finish, and it will tell me the relative area as well in acres. I can pick out square feet, and I can, looks like I have to redo it again, but there's an option here to precisely measure different land areas in square feet, which is really advantageous for us. As you're doing site selection and as you're doing site inventory for your final studio project, having a relative area is really, really, really helpful. Now, I'm old enough that I can tell you how we used to do this with analog tools and maps and other instruments, but believe me, this is a real time saver in terms of understanding the square footage of a potential site that you want to develop or design or add to or enhance further. So these measuring tools that are in the beacon are very helpful for us to understand relative distance as well as overall potential buildable area. So I'll clear that out. And of course, you can print this out to a scale that you can actually start to draw over or sketch over or put trace paper over or bring into your tablet and trace over that. So lots of different options for you to think about how to use this imagery in terms of laying trace paper over it or drawing it from observation or bringing it into a tablet and sketching over it there. So Beacon GIS viewer available for a lot of Indiana counties and municipalities. Very useful tool for understanding sites in terms of contour elevation, 2019 current aerial photography, as well as relative distances, relative areas. It's in Indianapolis and Marion County. We have to go to maps.indy.gov. So maps.indy.gov. We click on Map Indy, and this gives us a GIS viewer for the entire city of Indianapolis and Marion County. You can see the entire county view here. We'll zoom in now to a portion of the city of Indianapolis. I'm going to look at a portion of White River State Park because it has a little bit of topographic change and because it interfaces with a river site, a couple of sites in there that you might be familiar with or are special to you. Lots of different art installations and public spaces that are around this portion of White River State Park, as well as the former right-of-way of Washington Street, which becomes the bridge that connects over to the zoo and the White River Gardens. So the default view looks something like this. There's a couple of different layers. The general layer here is the Map Indy layer, which has this aerial photography. We've got a choice here of different years, which happens here. I've got 2019, the latest edition here. We've got a slider here that will change the opacity and visibility of that aerial layer. So if I start to slide this back and forth, it just makes some things more visible, less visible, um, or all aerial, so depending on how you want your map to look. And then we need to click on More. We have to come over to this triangle here and click on that next to Property. And then I'm going to turn on Contour Lines, and that will update the map with all of these spot elevations. These again are elevations above sea level. Here in Muncie we are just over 900 feet. Indianapolis is around the 700-foot mark. Now the contours are not terribly visible here, but if I zoom in further, they're a little bit better. They're basically a brown line there, so if I change the aerial photography, you see these brown lines are much more visible now. You can start to see how this bowl here is a feature in the landscape here. You can see a slight hill that overlooks that bowl. You can see all of the different social areas and gathering areas that are portions of the park, different terraces and landings, ramps, staircases, and then water features as the canal terminates here on the south end and terminates here down by the NCAA Hall of Champions and the State Museum. So you can see those brown lines are the spot elevation and the contour lines for that show you the changes in elevation there. Again, the appearance of the aerial really depends on you. If you slide it back and forth here, you can see an overlay of different land uses onto the aerial. If I slide it over here further to the left, you can see those land uses highlighted. We're looking at a park, so that's all green for open space, and you can see I can slide that off just so we have an aerial view with the contours very visible. So that's a pretty good map right there, and that in itself then can be prepped for printing. We can see the scale over here on the lower left, 50 meters here, 200 feet. It's about 2 inches, so we're in that 1 to 100 realm. So if I were to look at just this portion of NCAA Hall of Champions and the terminus of the canal, south terminus of the canal, this portion of White River State Park, great project by the landscape architecture firm of Sasaki Associates out of Boston. We can get this prepped for printing. So we go to print, and we can give it a title if you wish. There's a couple of different options here for just map only, or different sizes of paper. A3 and A4 are European styles of paper. So if I go to letter, ANZA landscape, print it to scale, I can assign a scale to it, and then decide if I want it as a JPEG, a GIF, an SVG, different file extensions, or a PDF, and that preps it for printing. Now I'm not connected to a printer, so it won't print, but if you are connected to a printer, I assume that it will print, but this computer is currently not connected to a printer. But that then preps a scalable map for Indianapolis and Marion County, Indiana. County, Fort Wayne, Indiana. We just started from our Google page here. Please type in IMAP. Just type in IMAP, Allen County, Indiana. The first hit will be our GIS data viewer for IMAP Allen County. This will take us to the Allen County GIS web viewer, so you can see Fort Wayne, New Haven, Fort Wayne Airport, and the Three Rivers. So let's zoom in. This is a slightly different interface, you'll notice, but a lot of the same tools. So if we're interested in sites in Allen County, we might consider portions of Headwaters Park or the new riverfront. And we can start to take a look at those. You can see information already populating. It looks like tree cover or parks and open space layer that's visible there. Let's take a look at their new riverfront site, the new Promenade Park, adjacent to downtown, Superior Street, Harrison Street. And we can see the option here for either a street map, an aerial map, or a hybrid map, so a hybrid of the two. So this imagery was probably from 2019. You can see Promenade Park just under construction. You also have an option for historical imagery view. So you can go back in time if you wish. the street map, the aerial, or a hybrid of the two for that imagery. We then can select some additional layers, and I think turning on the contours is probably of interest to us. More visible on the street map versus the aerial, but depending on your readability and interest there. If we zoom in right onto the Promenade Park, we can see 758, 760 feet above sea level. Again, about 200 feet lower than Muncie. We're just above 900 feet here in Muncie. So that's a pretty readable map, and you can see the contour lines there getting closer together as we get closer to the river. If we were to zoom out and take a look at Headwaters Park, there's a lot of features in Headwaters Park already as that park has developed over time. Most folks use this southern end of the park here, but there's a lot of other features on this northern end of the park if you were to explore that further. Here's this roundabout over here on the terminus of Barr Street, and we can see a historic old fort across the river, and if we turn on the aerial, things make a heck of a lot more sense just in terms of the different features that are part of the Headwaters Park design. You can see elliptical shapes and different walking trails and different monuments, different landscapes, different open spaces, things like that. So a lot of different stuff to look at there. And then the new promenade links all of that, starts to link all of that together. In terms of getting a map that's ready for us to use, however, if we were to zoom in then onto a portion of this portion of the park, or even including part of the old fort. A little bit of topo change here. There's the footbridge across the park over to the old fort. And we then get ready for printing. We then go to a share tool up here in the upper right. And there's a printing icon right here. Map scale current view, we can again push it to 1 to 100 and have it fit on an ANF by 11. Again, play with that just in terms of how much of the view you can see. You might want to do this 2 or 3 times just in terms of the different scales that you can see here. What it'll basically do is take the imagery and force it onto a relative scale onto the size paper that you can print it out. And then click on print. And it'll give you a message here. Your print is being built. Please continue to use the map. And so it's flying through space, going to a server somewhere, and is forming a PDF for us to print. We can still fly around here, take a look at other portions of the park. Again, different walking trails, biking trails, and things like that. So that print status is continuing to be built. Skate park here across the river. Print is now complete, so we know we can click on View Print. That will now, and then you can see we have not entered anything onto the legend, but this now is an official map. Looks pretty official, and it'll give us a relative scale. 1 inch equals 100 feet. So you can use an engineering scale once again. Use the 10 portion of the engineering scale to do relative measurements, and of course we have a north arrow. So we have an aerial view with the contour lines very visible here in pink and lavender, very easy to see, very easy to read. And then that's ready for download and printing. So just download that to your computer and then print it. So that completes the GIS viewer for Allen County, Indiana, Fort Wayne area. County, Indiana. This would include the cities of Crown Point, Merrillville, Gary, and surrounding municipalities. We just go to, we have the Lake County, Indiana.org landing site. We go then to this button here that asks us to go to Lake County GIS website. It will open a new window, and we'll go to Portico, My GIS Online. So different website, different web interface. All these different counties have slightly different versions, but they're all, once you start to get to know the tools, they're pretty much relatively the same. We can see a desktop, a tablet, and a mobile version, so select which version. And then it will load the GIS layers. It takes a moment depending on your internet connection. Accept the disclaimer, and you can see Lake County, Indiana highlighted here. So I will zoom in. We can see a bunch of layers here, which are really helpful. You can turn these on and off. So I will turn off much of these political layers. I'll keep the contours on, and I'll select a 2018 image. And all of these different sliders here will show their relative transparency or translucency. So good stuff to know there. So let's see. I want my contours on. I want my imagery on. And let's just take a look at the dunes, lakeshore, portion of the Ogden Dunes, or the portion of the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. Right in the upper right-hand corner of the county, you can see where that aerial imagery drops right off. There's a portion of the dunes right there between Long Lake and Lake Michigan. So I'll just zoom in onto the topographic sort of changes. You can see a parking lot over here on this portion of the site. We have to zoom in pretty far before we start to see the contour lines. So I'll click on the plus. I'll tell the viewer to plug in the 2013 contours. That's our latest contours, and we can then slide those up and down. They will populate here shortly. So we're looking at a portion of the Indiana Dunes Lakeshore. Let me move the window up here. We can see our choices here. We've got scale, we've got base maps, so we can actually choose the county imagery. There's even a sliding scale here. We can go back in time and take a look at the dunes over time. There's the world imagery, which you can see is taken from space, so there's a cloud in the way, so probably the county imagery is probably going to be better there. But a couple of different base maps to choose from there. I'm interested again in the contours. I need to turn on the contours and then slide those up. So I want to zoom in pretty far. And we can see the different trails that people have trod or cut through as they explore the dunes on foot. So you can see trails there carved out onto the Ogden Dunes Lakeshore. Here at the edge of the county, so you can see how that drops right off. So we're actually on the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore property there. The edge of Lake County ends right here, so here the contour lines start to pop up. Again, these are all elevations above sea level. We are at about 580 to just under 600 feet before that neighborhood starts. So if we were just to look at this portion of this beach, right where Lake County ends, zoom in pretty far, we can see how the gentle slope from this property down to the lakeshore happens right there. We can also see how individual properties might have their own portion of dune or lakeshore there. So let me zoom in pretty far in here, get a good sense of the profile, and get that ready for printing. You can see our scale bar down here is going to be following our map viewer. We can also push it to a particular scale. But then this gives us sort of control over what kind of base imagery we have, the relative visibility of the layer. You can see I can turn the contours up and down. I can turn the aerial almost to a milky white there, so the contours are more visible, or I can make the aerial very visible. The contours are visible as these green lines. There's even a line measuring tool. There's a line and shape measuring tool, so if I were to start to draw a shape here, it would give me relative area. And it'll tell me that's about 212 square feet. Line measure, similar. We just draw a line and then double click or tap to finish it. So measurements are available in this particular GIS viewer. If it's ready to export, you can export the image of the map to a different software. You select your file extension, either a BMP, JPEG, PNG, TIFF, or a PDF. Or you can set it up for printing. I'll go to the print button here. I then select an 8.5 by 11 landscape, push it to a particular scale. Once again, experiment with this. It might try it at 50 or 100 just in terms of how much of this that you want to include and whether or not you want to include the legend. So it too, like the other GIS websites, will send it to a printer server. My pop-ups are blocked, so you may need to unblock your pop-ups in order for that PDF to appear. Let me try exporting it. PDF, georeference data, create image, view image, and there it is, ready for downloading. So then I can right mouse click this or drag it directly to my desktop. However you save an image from the internet, chances are either a control click or a right mouse click or print tool. Any way that you save an image, that image now is ready to save. So that completes the GIS viewer for Lake County, Indiana, including municipalities of Merrillville, Crown Point, Gary, and all points nearby.
Good. All right. So we're here. All right, mostly here. So we're gonna advance more for the presentation today. We're gonna go a little bit quicker. This is a sandwich. It's a metaphor. Okay. It's a metaphor. All right. It's a metaphor for how much you understood about design before you started here. All right. Design is simple. It's just two pieces of bread with some stuff in the middle, and it's wonderful, all right? So just remember this. This is a sandwich, but keep it in your mind. Because we did this. Remember this? You did the training project. Little did you know that you were actually talking about spaces, circulation, bodies moving through space, changes in elevation. It was all these things wrapped up in this project that you were focused on that maybe you didn't realize you were focused on again. And again, how do we apply that knowledge to what we're doing today? Because this is something that's, that differentiates experts from novices. Experts make connections between things. Novices put all of the information that they have into separate categories and they don't link them. So that's what we're doing today with you. So you did this, right? And you loved it. But then you did this. Right? It's a tile project. But now, looking back at it, you realize that you were talking about positive and negative space. You were talking about balance. You were talking about even maybe how to extrude these spaces, how to create space from a two-dimensional plan, how to transform something from one thing into the next, and how to do that multiple times. You're actually being a big word called iterative. How many of you have heard that word before? How many of you have secretly not known what we were talking about when we said iterative? It's okay. Iterative means over and over and over. And did you do this project over and over and over again? You did. And you changed and we tweaked just little things, but then you did it again. So you're actually doing design thinking. You're thinking like designers. And then you did this. You just did this. And this was for my section, so it's crazy. And it's crazy because we all looked at this from a different perspective, but when you did this model, you were actually taking something that was not architecture, it wasn't design, it was text. You could argue that it is architecture and it is design, but you were taking it and you were transforming it into something else. And today, you explained very succinctly why you did things for really good reasons, other than because I like it. Question. How many of you want to date somebody for the only reason is they all think you're cool? Or do you want somebody who is interested in you, who has good reasons for dating you? I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that later, because when you're doing this, little did you know you were also talking about additive space, you were talking about subtractive space, you were doing all this sort of design thinking. You were thinking about lots of stuff. This is a sandwich. This is Chicago. Right? When you were in Chicago, we were actually, as your professors, we were trying to point everything out to you. We were trying to explain really good design. We were trying to show you proportion and scale and surfaces and materials and how do people walk through and how do you diagram these things. We were trying to show you really good sandwiches. How they're put together. How do spaces, if spaces were fit, remember this metaphor, how do these things fit together? What makes them good? And they're not all alike. They're not all peanut butter and jelly. They're different, but yet they're really good, and they share some common characteristics. None of these are not a sandwich, right? None of these are pretending to be a sandwich. Good design can't pretend to be anything but good design. A bad design can't pretend to be good design. And so we're out there, we're showing it to you. So now you understand that this is design. This is actually what you're doing. It's like a Scooby-Doo sandwich. It's like a dad would. All right? It's like Shaggy. This is what he has power over the child. Now, all of these things. So, but the nice thing is, all of the projects that we've been doing, we've been chunking this up for you. Remember about pain? We were just talking about a little bit of stuff. When we were talking about invisible cities, we were just talking about a little bit of stuff, maybe just the baloney. All right, but this is your opportunity. This next project is your opportunity to actually make a sandwich like this. All right, it's time to bring everything together into one big project. At the beginning of the semester, you saw this. These are all the things that you're going to be able to do at the end of the semester. Right? Let's read them. Course objectives. Upon completion of this course, or these courses, because this is 162 as well, 161. At minimum, you will be expected to demonstrate skills or understanding in, and when I read this, I want you to reflect and think, how are you doing in these things, all right? Because these are the things that we're trying to teach you, and you're probably about almost at the skimming break there. All right, 1, how to be a design student. Time/task management. What have you learned about time management? That you're bad at it, good, you are. That's because you haven't done it a lot. Alright, keep going, sorry. Learning and functioning in a studio environment. How many of you have been in a studio before you were here? Good. So how many times was this your first studio environment? Good. So you're learning how this is completely different than your high school English class. Maybe. Maybe you're doing cool stuff like reading Italian novels in English. Alright, working independently and as a team member, check. 2, the fundamental tools and processes of design, spatial organizations and relationships, analytical tools and ordering principles. How are you doing on that? Good. Have you read your Ching books? Read your Ching books, it's all there. Alright, 3, effective use of basic communication methods and the tools used in their making, diagrams, drawing, lettering, model making, speaking, and writing. All of this is going to be in the next project. The investigations and processes that lead to the formation of design concepts, their realization as objects, plans, and places. Basic critical thinking and a foundation of literacy in design and environmental design. Sorry, I left a word out there. The relationships of the environmental design and planning professions to each other, the roles, contributions, and responsibilities of the profession to society and to environmental health, and last 8, the ability to apply the fundamentals of both natural and formal ordering systems, and the capacity of each to inform 2- and 3-dimensional designs. All right, so there, that's what you are learning to do this semester. At this point, we've been doing it, and now we're going to put them all together. So it's this idea of design in context. So this is your final project, CAP101, Unit 5, Design in Context, the White River Walk. Now, the other thing is, remember that big sandwich? We're still not going to make you do it all at once. We're still going to divide it into parts so it's easier to process and understand. A big component of this project is there's going to be 3 phases, and each phase is going to lead you to design decisions about the next phase. All right? So really, and we'll explain this a little bit, but I just wanted to lay that out. You're going to have these phases, but they're going to work into each other. All right? So it's not going to be building an apple and then making an orange. Everything is really well thought out and connected in this project. Also, this idea that we're going to design in context. Remember those photos I was showing you in the beginning? Would that work in New York City, the designs that I showed you? Let's go back to that. Would this work in New York City? No, why not? The skyline is a different skyline, yeah. Paris has capped their skyline at a certain point so that there's only a few objects that are higher. Good, what else? Why won't this work? Yes?
Too crowded.
Too crowded, good. What else? Is there an Eiffel Tower? No. So this is 100% about designing. Well, not yet, but you can steal it. No. So it's this idea that you're going to be designing in context, and this is what makes design a lot different from other professions. Is every single design that you do is going to be different because of the context. And so we're giving you that opportunity to practice that now. All right, sandwiches. Sorry, go back to sandwiches. All right, so we're going to be talking about the White River Walk. All right, now I need to switch from PowerPoint to Word, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. Please jump in if I look like I'm floundering. That's the symbol to help me on drowning. We'll be okay. Now, so a little bit about what you're going to be doing. This is what the final product could look like. What do you see? Have you seen one of these before?
I don't.
It's in Dutch, but you understand it. We can understand it. Where is the point of interest? The big star. Good. We don't even know what that is. Beiningstadscheidam. Maybe you probably stadium. I don't know what it is, but you're right. We can see what it is. All right. What's leading to it? Multiple things, but what do they look like based on this? Just this image that you're looking at. You've never seen this before. Paths, good. So is one more important than the other? One is how do you know? It's thicker, good. All right. So now where is a secondary node, or a secondary point of interest? They're all stars, but where are they? They both are by something. Actually, they're both by two somethings. Look at colors. What are they by? Green! Okay, what does green usually mean? Grass. And if this is a city scale, what does it mean? Park. Good. Alright, so we can look at these and we can immediately tell that they're probably by some sort of open space. We don't need to know that. Alright, what are the big green arrows for? What do you think? Wind, maybe. What else? What do you think? Circulation. It could be circulation. It looks like it's ending. What's the big blue thing, do you think? There's two big blue things. Which one am I talking about, Dr. Merrill? The big one at the bottom. Probably a river. Good. What's the other one, probably? Probably a what? Did somebody say canal? Good. Or what? A ditch? It could be a ditch. We don't know, but it looks like it's associated with water. But what's interesting about this is that this has everything that we've talked about in terms of lynching analysis. Remember that? So where are the edges? Well, the river is an edge. Where are the nodes? I should ask that. What is the symbol for node on this map? The circle, good. How do you know? How do you know it's a node? Because it has stars upon bars? Again, how do you know it's a node? Nobody's told me yet. Repetition, good. So I see it in multiple places. It looks like the nodes are also connected by something, probably by circulation, and then they're being intersected by something else. And so there we have the idea of a node. It's an intersection of two different systems, or two different flows within this. All right, good. So you understood that. So today, these are the styles of graphics that you're going to be creating. All right, so nothing more, nothing less than quick sketches on a map of what you see and how you interpret what you see. All right? Oh, but what about things that you can't see? Like wind or smells? Or what are some of the things that you can't see that you're going to want to take note of down along the river? I have 3 examples and then I'll move on. Noise from the street, very good. That's one. What else? You can't see. Yes. Wait, say what? Okay. Argue how you would experience topography in a way other than your sight. Yeah, by falling down the river. Good. Okay. That's one way of experiencing it. And also that sense of descending, right? Okay. All right. Anything else? I mean, one more. What's something else that you won't see that you're going to make notes of? Wildlife. Okay, so the sounds of wildlife, or traces of, well, you can see traces, or scents. Okay. All right, I'll buy that for those three. All right. Again, here is another example. What do you see? This one has notation on it in English. How does that work? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Is it superfluous to have text? The real question is, based on this, what are you going to draw? So you need to take something from this, like the way that some of the line weight, some of the symbols. Do you see what the existing buildings look like? They're black. Good. All right, they're filled in. So you are already starting to talk a little bit about the positive and negative space of this site. All right, what else do you see that you're going to steal? This is all for you just to steal from.
Different viewpoints from your site.
Okay, good. The different viewpoints from the site. That's going to be important. When you're there on the site, you're going to be looking at the river. Is there a nice long view down the river to see something from far away? Is it really choppy that you don't get to see? Are there important buildings that actually need to be seen from the river? Good. What else? One more thing that you're going to steal from this. Yes? Oh, a North Arrow. That is fantastic. I think there might be a North Arrow on your map. But if not, yes, you definitely should know the direction of things. All right, that one more. I lied. I'm a liar. What? The sun path. That is interesting as well. To think about, why is that important, though? Lighting, good. So you need to know where the sun is. So if you're going to be proposing a coffee nook and it's not in the morning sun, would there be a question about that? There'd be some conversation. All right, one more. Here, what are you going to steal from us? These are pretty. They're in their own right. They're actually artistic and they're interesting to look at. So that's why I chose them. But what do you see that you like? The legend. Good. Yes, you can even start to add color. You can have a piece of trace paper and you can start to add your own notation of what the colors are for this. What's funny to me is that the Mississippi River is yellow. No judgment. But it's also showing which way it's flowing. So that was very interesting. Anything else? Flood zone. Okay, good. Yeah, so that's might be important for some of your sites. Like in some of the areas that you're looking at. Where do you anticipate it's actually on your map where the FEMA flood zones are? Good. What else?
Jeremy?
Yes.
You might want to talk about, on this one, it's labeled select views, I think. On the previous one, there were individual discrete views, but maybe the idea of a view shed, kind of the limits of that view shed, so everything in between is one continuous view, is a useful element.
No, good point. Did everybody hear that? I'm going to paraphrase this. I did the first one had very distinct views, saying, oh, you're going to see this element there or this element here, but this one is talking about like a span of view, so you've got a nice panoramic view from different places, and so those are two different types of view corridors or things that you can see through, and so that probably would be worth noting. Good. Anything else?
Site analysis. To what site analysis is about. And I want to start with sort of the landscape design planning process. So you all know what landscape planning is, right? It's the futuristic approach to taking parcels of land and setting them aside and planning for what's going to happen in the future. Where program elements can see themselves laying out demands and predictive needs and so forth. That's basic, right? The landscape design process, site design, is kind of what you're about to embark on here after the analysis. So the arranging elements on a site. It's the qualitative and the functional. Arrangement of parcels of land, pieces of areas, spaces, all that. Uses. Specific social purpose, we've talked about what this project is about. Housing, education, recreation, industry, agriculture, more. A lot of those topics are part of this landscape design effort you're about to get into. Remember this, it's creative compromise. Something's going to be sacrificed somewhere along the way, either for the human or the ecosystems or nature. So think about that. Design process, you know what that is, right? It's a sequential process, problem-solving process. Usually start at the beginning at some level, and you move through the more complicated, more complex end result. It's a decision-making process, organizational framework, orderly approach to solving problems. You can name it, define it any way you can think of, right? Helps designers explain solutions to clients, involves rational and intuitive judgments and skills. You're young at this, right? You don't do a lot of design. You haven't done a lot of design. So judgments might come harder for some of you. Iterative and flexible. It's hugely important. It's often not linear at all. Even though I'm going to present it in a linear fashion, in a diagram here in a second, you're always going back to the beginning and starting over, right? You don't ever, never, just start and not turn around and look back. It always starts with a problem, we give you the problem. And it always has a client. Whether it's someone who's paying you or someone who's going to be using the site. The animals, the people, whatever else, visitors. The phases of design, we're going to focus on this one right here, these two, 1 and 2 here. And that's the process. Maybe you've seen this diagram before. Maybe it's showed up in LA100 or Plan 100, maybe Architecture 100. It's a common diagram that most designers will follow in some way, shape, or form. It shifts from time to time, but we're dealing with this at the very beginning, right? We gave you the problem, you know who the clients are, visitors, the users who are going to be using this place, visiting or coming here. We know what the program is, we gave that to you, right? You may be adding some things to it, but check with us and see if that's okay. You're going to select the site, okay? And then you're going to inventory that site. The physical, biological, and cultural factors. Things that are happening there. What are the facts? Where are the winds coming from? What's the vegetation? Where are the water systems? Where are the circulation routes? And then you're going to get to the analysis part here. So these first 3 colors, yellow to red to blue, are what you're going to accomplish in this the second phase of this project. We're ultimately going to get to this point right here. Maybe touch a little bit on master planning, but mostly we're in the conceptual development in this project. Of this foreshadow what's to come. So investigation, data collection. We're going to pick a site, we've got the program, we're going to inventory that site, documenting the existing conditions, moving through fast, I know. Analysis is, I think, maybe the most important part of the design process. That's just me. I think it's critical because it's going to almost give you the roadmap to what design is going to happen, where it should happen. Evaluating the physical, biological, cultural attributes that lead to suitability for the site, for those program uses. Summary of suitability of the site. It's a direct response. This is something not to forget. I should have bolded this one right here. It's a direct response to the program and the inventory. Anytime you're analyzing existing conditions, you're always going back to that program and thinking about, oh, okay, I've been asked to design an outdoor contemplation space. Where should that be on the site? Where's a good spot for that? Is it out in the open, on top of the hill, with views to the sunset in the west? If we're in this country? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Identification, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, the SWOT analysis you probably heard mentioned before, right? It's a really good way to think about what you look for in an analysis. Address those 4 words and you'll come out pretty good on the other side. Critical factors, positives and negatives. Illustrated in 1 or more maps or drawings. Asking that famous question, so what? Malcolm likes to say that in LA100 classes. I've said that many times as well in my LA100 classes. So let's look at some quick examples of analysis drawings. This is a sort of loose, informative example of an analysis, but I want to call attention to things that are written there. It's not just the graphics that, graphics are fine. It's just a marker and pen on tracing paper, right? No big deal. Not very complicated, not very threatening to look at that and say, yeah, I can do that, that's no problem. Just washes of color and pen. loose pen, freehand pen. You don't get out your ruler and straight edges and start doing that for your analysis problems. That's not what that's about. Keep it loose, keep it quick. Look at some of these comments. I love this one right here. There's not a strong connection between the field and the shelter, the new shelter. Should there be? Analysis, it's a perfect place to start asking questions about should the design element go here or not? Is this a good spot for an outdoor use area of some sort or a food production area? Or should the building be on the edge of the cliff for dramatic effect? Or should it be down in the flat area where it might flood a lot? That's kind of a no-brainer question, right? But this is the kind of thing that you could look at, you could read all sorts of these comments and start to perceive how your analysis might lay out here, just using this as an example. Let's look at, it's common to question the possibilities. I talked about that. I sort of should have advanced these little text blocks here. This was simply created by hand and markers on it. Here's one that was computer generated. I think illustrated in this. This is a very basic analysis. It's not very graphically attractive necessarily, but it communicates a lot of information. This is a Southwest waterfront project site in Washington, D.C. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that place, but the Nationals, the baseball team Nationals play up here somewhere. The new D.C. United soccer stadium is just a block to the north of this site. Really cool place. So the student's project site in this case is right here. This was their project site. You can see the dashed line that outlines it. So we were asked to design this Buzzard Point site to be a public civic gathering space. Kind of a park, but sort of not necessarily defined as a park. So what are the things that the students would look at? How do you, without the program in front of you, you don't know exactly what they were trying to do. But it's an urban waterfront site, and the primary goal is to transform an isolated neglected site into a public waterfront amenity, green space. So you can see here that the red text, I think, is what I want to call your attention to. A lot of this stuff is factual information, right? These are proposed living units coming in here. This is mixed-use living units over here. This is an old power plant, PepCo power plant. Should they save it? Should they not save it? And students were thinking about, okay, they're going to repurpose this building as an exhibit space, and a gallery with eating and opportunities for museum kinds of experiences inside this old structure. So that's the kind of thing you would start to do in an urban kind of site analysis. We don't have an urban site, correct? And most of you are not going to choose an urban site because there's roads in urban conditions. We don't want those. So take a look at this and see. We're going to remove this rope out for what reason? It'd be nice to know a little bit more. Why? Why would you remove that? Maybe it's necessary for something. Remove parking here. Well, okay, that's fine, but go further and say, what's the purpose of remove parking to allow for more outdoor human-related people places rather than car places. Change landform so that trash doesn't build up in this spot right here. That's a pretty telling thing in an analysis, isn't it? If you're going to be telling yourself in an analysis that you're going to change something about the site, then your design would respond to that, right? Yeah, of course. So think about that as you look at these. This one, I don't want to call too much attention to this, or spend too much time on this, but this is just a typical CAD drawing on the left, and then it's a CAD drawing over here with just handwritten notes over the top of it on the right-hand side. And I just wanted to talk about what you see. I'm going to highlight a couple of these points here to say that this is a future school site. That's all this is trying to get a point across here in terms of the program. Most of the time, an analysis needs to have some sort of introduction of let's go here. Why are we analyzing the site? Was it for a trash dump that's going to come in? Is it for a school? Is it for a new commercial high-rise office building? Who knows what? It could all mean different things, so you would analyze the site in different ways. So I just highlighted a few things to call attention to. And my eyes are not that good, so I should probably not have done this. Best apparent building site would need to all approach roads. So they're saying this might be the best building site here. Here's one down here, 2 miles to the treatment plant, sewage treatment plant. That might mean something to your design, right? That's part of an analysis. That's kind of factual information, but you start asking questions about that, then it starts to become something else. How about the best point of entry? Ample site distances. So if you identify somewhere on your site that this is the best point of entry, where people should be walking in because they see a great view presented to them of all the nature that's there, that might tell you where your entrance to the site's going to be, right? It's kind of no-brainer stuff if you do a good analysis, but you got to do it in order to be able to execute your design using it. This parcel is key to the best use of the site. This is interesting, right? This actually, the site boundary is right here. And it's saying this parcel over here is critical to acquire in order for the site to actually be successful, for that school to function. So maybe there's a part of your site that you're going to suggest that in the future, this eco-retreat would be best if we could get this part of the creek on the other side, for whatever reason. All farm buildings are dilapidated, removed, but save the wall stone. So if there's an old structure on the site, the building has got to come down and make way for this new school. Maybe you can use the material of that school, this old stone, as a pathway or a new wall for another part of the building that's going to be in the future. So anyway, I won't get into any more of those necessarily. I'll put this on box as well, and you can read these on your own to get a sense of the other elements that are there. And the kinds of things you'll probably start seeing in your analysis. This is an example of a playground, a future playground in New Bremen, Ohio, that a student did as a fifth-year project. So all I want to do here is just express some graphic techniques that she used to identify important things about the site relative to New Bremen, the city that this park site is located in. Now you can see some of the map legend symbols, colors, and so forth are identified here in the plan. It's a location map, an orientation map to give people a sense of where you are. Inlaid an aerial photograph within a grayed out context of the city to see where very clearly in color where the site is. And then started with attaching photographs and presenting where these photographs are shot on the site to get a sense of what's happening there. This may not be something you do on yours, but it's a way to start understanding what you're showing as existing conditions. So some character of the site, what's going on off the site that might be important, some historical buildings. And a couple of, what the canal here looks like in these two images here, looking at the canal from a couple of different perspectives. And then starting to understand topography. This is one way graphically to represent topography, grade change on your site. You might draw a section through the site, understand what's happening from water level up to the plateau that you may have identified as your site. And maybe you do a graphic that's something like this. Again, this may be more sophisticated and complex than you need to get into. The idea behind this is important, and that's all I'm trying to get across is if there's topography, if there's grade change on your site, that's part of your analysis. It needs to be expressed somehow, and that's important. And then you can start to identify views in these cones, start to identify vehicular circulation in the bold routes, pedestrian circulation in the dotted minor routes, and then the green to represent the open space, the park space, and so on. Inventory information, factual stuff. And then you start to see, and she didn't do a really good analysis, so I had to plug in some text here to start describing what you see in some of these symbols. The orange circles respond to major activities and nodes. The red asterisk represents a simple node that utilizes view sheds and topography and so forth. So you start to understand things with arrows and symbols and line types and changes in those kinds of illustrative techniques. It's really helpful to clarify and communicate what you're trying to say in your analysis. And then the last thing I'm going to show is very quickly, this doesn't need to take much time at all. This is a simple design program for a residential lot, a residential design. So you can see things like the lawn, the size as large as possible, the materials grass. I need a play area that's about 150 square feet in size. Just factual things. These are elements that I want to incorporate in my design. We've given you some of that. Now you're going to have to go and figure out what are the square footages of these things. How big should a kitchen and a food preparation area be? How big should a studio be? I don't know. Depends on what's going to happen in that studio, right? So You see an inventory on the left-hand side, and you see an analysis on the right. And I want you to just take some time to look at and compare what the inventory is saying and what the analysis is saying. And they should be different, and they are. And a real good example is, they've got cold northwest winter winds coming into the site from here. They're coming in from up here and they come barreling into the back door of the house. So what? Big deal. Let the air in. I'm hot. Right? Well, how do you solve that? So what over the analysis part is we're going to block those cold northwest winds with a coniferous hedge or a windbreak, right? It's kind of easy, isn't it? Look at an inventory that's factual information to say the northwest winds are coming in and they're going to make the backyard cold, and maybe the house cold. So how do we fix it? And that's what you do in your analysis is you simply suggest ways that you can fix that problem, that perceived problem, by saying, block the winds with evergreen trees. It's a wonderful windbreak. That's just one little example for you to take with you as you press on in this phase 2. Your analysis is all about identifying those kinds of relationships between inventory and analysis. And you're going to do it in one go. You don't have to do it separately. Okay? So, I'm going to stop there. I know I've spoken long enough. And see if you have questions. Anybody have questions about anything at all, about the phase 2 3?